Hello, my name is Satria Firmanda. My student number is 27 as County Attorney.
Hello, my name is Ahmad Musyaddad and my student number is 004 as Mr. Hell.
My name is Restu Dinda Novianty, student number 005 as Sheriff Henry Peters and the narrator.
Hello, my name is Nabilah Mahdiyyah. My student number is 23 as Mrs. Hale.
Hi, my name is Letifa Qotrunnada with student number 15.
The kitchen in the now abandoned farmhouse of John Wright, a gloomy kitchen and left without having been put in order. Unwashed pans under the sink, a loaf of bread outside the bread box, a dish towel on the table, other signs of incompleted work. At the rear, the outer door opens and the sheriff comes in followed by the county attorney and Hale. The sheriff and Hale are men in the middle life. The county attorney is a young man, or much bundled up and go at once to the stove. They are followed by the two women. The sheriff's wife first. She is a slight, wiry woman, a thin, nervous face. Mrs. Hale is larger and would ordinarily be called more comfortable looking, but she is disturbed now and looks fearfully about as she enters. The women have come in slowly and stand close together near the door.
This feels good. Come up to the fire, ladies.
I'm not cold.
Now, Mr. Hale, before we move things about, you explain to Mr. Henderson just what you saw when you came here yesterday morning.
By the way, has anything been moved? Are things just as you left them yesterday?
It's just the same. When it dropped below zero last night, I thought I'd better send Frank out this morning to make fire for us. No use getting pneumonia with BKs on. But I told him not to touch anything except the stove. And you know, Frank.
Somebody should have been left here yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. When I had to send Frank for that man who went crazy, I want you to know I had my hands full yesterday. I knew you could get back from Omaha by today, and as long as I went over everything here myself...
Well, Mr. Hill, tell just what happened when you came here yesterday morning.
Harry and I had started to town with a load of potatoes. We came along the road from my place and as courier I said, I'm going to see if I can't get John Wright to coin with me on a party telephone. I spoke to Wright about it once before he put me off, saying folks talk too much anyway. And all he asked was peace and quiet. I guess you know about how much he talked himself. But I thought maybe if I went to the house and talked about it before his wife. So I said to Harry that I didn't know as what his wife wanted much different to John.
Let's talk about that later, Mr. Hill. I don't want to talk about that. Just tell now what happened when you got to the house.
I didn't hear or see anything. I knocked at the door and still it was all quiet inside. But I knew that they must be up because it was past 8 o'clock. So I knocked again and I thought that I heard somebody say, "Come in." I wasn't sure. I'm not sure yet, but I opened the door. This is the door. And there, in that rocker, sat Mrs. Wright.
They all look at the rocker.
What she was doing?
She was rocking back and forth. She had her apron in her hand and was kind of pleading it.
And how did she look?
Well, she looked queer.
How do you mean queer?
Well, as if she didn't know what she was going to do next and kind of done up.
How did she seem to feel about your coming?
Why? I don't think she minded, one way or other. She didn't pay much attention, I said. How do Miss Wright? It's cold, ain't it? And she said, is it? And went on kind of pleading at her apron. Well, I was surprised. She didn't ask me to come up to the stove or to sit down, but just sat there, not even looking at me. So I said, I want to see John. And then she laughed. I guess you would call it a laugh. I thought of Harry and the team outside, so I said a little sharp, "Can't I see John?" "No," she says, kinda dull like. "Ain't he home?" says I. "Yes," says he. "He's home." "Then why can't I see him?" I asked her out of patience. "'Cause he's dead." "Dead?" says I. She just nodded her head, not getting a bit excited, but rocking back and forth. "Why, where is he?" says I, not knowing what to say. She just pointed upstairs. I like that. I caught up with the idea of going up there. I walked from there to here, and then I says, "Oh, why? What did he die of?" "He died of a rope around his neck," says he, and just went on pleading at her point. Well, I went out and called Harry. I thought I need help, and we went upstairs, and then there he was lying.
I think I'd rather have you go into that upstairs where you can point it all out. Just go on now with the rest of the story.
Well, my first thought was to get that robe off. It looked. But Harry, he went up to him and he said, "No, he's dead all right, and we had better not touch anything." So we went back downstairs, and she was still sitting that same way. "Has anybody been notified?" I asked. "No," says he unconcerned. "Who did this, Miss Wright?" said Harry. He said it business like, and he stopped pleading of her apron and said, "I don't know." "You don't know?" says Harry. "No," says she. "Weren't you sleeping in the bed with him?" says Harry. "Yes," says he, "but he wasn't on the inside." "Somebody slipped a rope around his neck and strangled him, and you didn't wake up?" says Harry. "I didn't wake up," she said after him. "Oh, we must look as if we didn't see how that could be." For after a minute she said, "I sleep sound." Harry was going to ask her more questions, but I said maybe we ought to let her tell the story first to the coroner or the sheriff. So Harry went fast as he could to River's place where there is a telephone.
And what did Mrs. Wright do when she knew that you had gone for the coroner?
She moved from that chair to this one over here and just sat there, with her hands held together and looking down. I got a feeling that I ought to make some conversation, so I said I had come in to see if John wanted to put in a telephone. And then he started to laugh. And then he stopped and looking at me, scared. But I don't know, maybe it wasn't scared. I would like to see it was. Soon Harry got back, and then talked to light cam and you, Mr. Peters, and so I guess that is all I know that you done.
I guess we'll go upstairs first, and then out to the barn and around there.
Nothing here but kitchen things.
The county attorney, after again looking around the kitchen, opens the door of a cupboard closet. He gets up on a chair and looks on a shelf, pulls his hand away. Sticky.
Here's a nice mess.
The women draw nearer.
Oh, her fruit. It did freeze. She worried about that when it turns to cold. She said the fire go out and her jars will break.
Well, can you beat the women? Held for murder and worrying about her prisoners.
I guess before we're through, she may have something more serious than preserves to worry about.
Well, women are used to worrying over trifles.
The two women move a little closer together.
And yet, for all their worries, what would we do without the ladies? Dirty towels. Not much of a housekeeper, would you say, ladies?
There's a great deal of work to be done on a farm.
To be sure, and yet, I know there are some Dixon Country Farms houses which do not have such rural towels.
Those towels get dirty awful quick. Men's hands aren't always as clean as they might be.
Ah, loyal to your sex, I see. But you and Mrs. Wright were neighbors. I suppose you were friends too.
I've not seen much of her of late years. I've not been in this house. It's more than a year.
And why was that? You didn't like her?
I like her all well enough. Farmers' wives have their hands full, Mr. Henderson. And then
Yes?
it never seemed a very cheerful place.
No, it's not cheerful. I shouldn't say she had homemaking instinct.
Well, I don't know as Wright had either.
You mean that they didn't get on very well?
No, I don't mean anything. But I don't think a place be any cheerfuler for John Wright's being in it.
I'd like to talk more of that a little later. I want to get the lay of things upstairs now.
I suppose anything Mrs. Peters does will be right. She was to take in some clothes for her, and a few little things. We left in such a hurry yesterday.
Yes, but I would like to see what you take, Mrs. Peters, and keep an eye out for anything that might be of use to us.
Yes, Mr. Henderson.
The women listened to the man's steps on the stairs, then looked about the kitchen.
I'd had to have men coming into my kitchen, snooping around and criticizing.
She arranges the pans under the sink which the lawyer had shoved out the place.
Of course, no more than dear Judy.
Judy is all right, but I guess the petty sheriff that came out to make the fire might have got a little of this on. Wish I had thought of that sooner. Seems mean to talk about her for not having things slipped up when she had to come away in such a hurry.
She had bread set.
She was going to put this in there. It's a shame about her fruit. I wonder if it's all gone. I think there's some here. That's all right, Mrs. Peters. Yes, here. Oh, this is cherries too. I declare I believe that's the only one. Oh, she'll feel awful bad after all her hard work in the hot weather. I remember the afternoon I put up my cherries last summer.
She put the bottle on the big kitchen table, center of the room. With a sigh, is about to sit down in the rocking chair. Before she is seated, realizes what chair it is. With a slow look at it, steps back. The chair which she has touched rocks back and forth.
Well, I must get these things from the front room closet. You coming with me, Mrs. Hell? You could help me to carry them.
They go in the other room. Reappear Mrs. Peters carrying a dress and skirt. Mrs. Hale following with a pair of shoes.
It's cold in there.
She puts the clothes on the big table and hurries to the stove.
Roy was close. I think maybe that's why she kept so much to herself. She didn't even belong to the ladies' aid. I suppose she felt she couldn't do her part, and then you don't enjoy things when you feel shabby. She used to wear pretty clothes and be lively when she was Minnie Foster, one of the town girls in the choir. But that was 30 years ago. This all used to take in.
But she said she wanted an apron. It's funny thing to want, but that isn't much to get you get dirty in jail. Goodness knows, but I suppose to just make her feel more natural. She said they was just in the top drawer of Miss Cupboard. Yes, here. And then her little shawl that always hung behind that door. Yes, here that is.
Quickly shuts door leading upstairs.
Mrs. Peters?
Yes, Mrs. Hell.
Do you think she did it?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, I don't think she did. Asking for an apron and her little show, worrying about her fruit.
Mr. Peters says it looks bad for Mr. Henderson is awful sarcastic in the speech. He'll make fun of her saying she didn't wake up.
Well, I guess John Bright didn't wake when they were sleeping that rope under his neck.
No, it's strange. It must have been done awful crafty and still. They say it was such a funny way to kill a man, rigging it all up like that.
That's just what Mr. Hale said. There was a gun in the house. He says that's what he can understand.
Mr. Henderson said coming out what was needed for the case was a booty, something to show anger or sudden feeling.
Well, I don't see any signs of anger around here. It's wild to hear. Wonder how they're finding things upstairs. Oh, I hope she had it a little more read up there. And it seems kind of sneaking. Locking her up in town and then coming out here and trying to get her own house to turn against her.
But Mrs. Hale, the law is the law.
I suppose it is. Better loosen up your things, Mrs. Peters. You won't feel them when you go out.
Mrs. Peters takes off her fur tippet, goes to hang it on hook at the back of the room, stands looking at the under part of the small corner table.
She was busy in a quilt.
She brings the large sewing basket and they look at the bright pieces.
It's log cabin pattern. Pretty, isn't it? I wonder if she was going to quilt it or just knot it.
Footsteps have been heard coming down the stairs. The sheriff enters, followed by Hill and the county attorney.
They wonder if she was going to kilt it or just knot it.
The men laugh. The women look abashed.
Frank's fire didn't do much up there, did it? Well, let's go out to the barn and get that cleared up.
I don't know if there's anything so strange or taking up our time with little things while we are waiting for them to get the evidence. I don't see as it's anything to laugh about.
Of course, they got awful important things on their minds.
Pulls up a chair and joins Mrs. Hale at the table.
Mrs. Peters, look at this one. Here, this is the one she was working on, and look at the sewing. All the rest of it has been so nice and even. And look at this. It's all over the place. Why, it looks as if she didn't know what she was about.
After she has said this, they look at each other, then start to glance back at the door. After an instant, Mrs. Hale has pulled at a knot and ripped the sewing.
Oh, what are you doing, Mrs. Hale?
Just pulling out a stitch or two that's not sewed very good. Bad sewing always made me fidgety.
I don't think we ought to touch things.
I'll just finish up this end. Mrs. Peters?
Yes, Mrs. Hale?
What do you suppose she was so nervous about?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if she was nervous. I sometimes so awful queer when I'm just tired. Well, I must get these things wrapped up. They may be through sooner than we think. I wonder where I can find a piece of paper and string.
In that cupboard, maybe?
Look, why there's a bird cage in here. Did she have a bird, Mrs. Hell?
Well, I don't know whether she did or not. I've not been here for so long. There was a man around last year selling canaries cheap, but I don't know why she took one. Maybe she did. She used to sing real pretty herself.
Seems funny to think of a bird in here. Yeah, but she must have had one, or why would she have a cage? I wonder what happened to.
I suppose maybe the cat caught it.
No, she didn't have a cat. She's got that feeling some people have about cats are being afraid of him. My cat got in her room and she was real upset and asked me to take it out.
My sister Bessie was like that. Queer, ain't it?
What? Look! Look at this door. It's broke. One of the hinges is pulled apart.
Looks as if someone must have been rude with it.
Why, yes.
She brings the cage forward and puts it on the table.
I wish if they're going to find any evidence they'd be about it. I don't like this place.
But I'm awful glad you come with me, Mrs. Hell. It will be lonesome for me sitting here alone.
It would, wouldn't it? But I tell you what I do wish, Mrs. Peters. I wish I had come over sometimes when she was here. I wish I had.
But you were awful busy, Mrs. Hell. Your house and your children.
I could have come. I stayed away because it weren't cheerful, and that's why I ought to have come. I've never liked this place. Maybe because it's down in hollow and you don't see the road. I don't know what it is, but it's a lonesome place and always was. I wish I had come over to see Minnie Foster sometimes. I can see it now.
Well, you mustn't reproach yourself, Mrs. Hell. Somehow we just don't see how it is with other folks until something comes up.
Not having children make less work, but it makes a quiet house and right out to work all day and no company when he did come in. Did she know John Wright, Mrs. Peters?
Not to know him. I've seen him in town. They say he was a good man.
Yes, good. He didn't drink and kept his word as well as most, I guess, and paid his debts. But he was a hard man, Mrs. Peters. Just to pass the time of day with him. Oh, like heroin that gets to the bone. I should think she would wanted a bird. But what do you suppose went with it?
I don't know. Unless I got sick and died.
She reaches over and swings the broken door, swings it again. Both women watch it.
You weren't raised round here, were you? You didn't know her.
No, till they brought her yesterday.
She, come to think of it, she was kind of like a bird herself, real sweet and pretty, but kind of timid and fluttery. How she did change. Tell you what, Mrs. Peters, why don't you take the cold in with you? It might take up her mind.
I think that's a real nice idea, Mrs. Hell. There couldn't possibly be any objection to it, could there? Now, what would I take? I wonder if her pages are in here and her things.
They look in the sewing basket.
Here is some red. I expect this has got sewing things in it. What a pretty box! Looks like something somebody would give you. Maybe her scissors are in here. What? There's something wrapped up in this piece of silk.
Why, this isn't her scissors.
Oh, Mrs. Peters, it's...
Mrs. Peters bends closer.
Oh, it's the bird.
But, Mrs. Peters, look at its neck. Look at its neck. It's all other side too.
Somebody, wrung its neck.
Their eyes meet. A look of growing comprehension, of horror. Steps are heard outside. Mrs. Hale slips box under kilt pieces and sinks into her chair. Enter sheriff and county attorney. Mrs. Peters rises.
Well, ladies, have you decided whether she was going to kill it or not it?
We think she was going to nod it.
Well, that's interesting, I'm sure. Has the bird flown?
We think the cat caught it.
Is there a cat?
Mrs. Hale glances in a quick covert way at Mrs. Peters.
No sign at all of anyone having come from the outside. Their own row. Now let's go up again and go over it piece by piece. It would have to have been someone who knew just the...
Mrs. Peters sits down. The two women sit there not looking at one another, but as if peering into something and at the same time holding back. When they talk now, it is in the manner of feeling their way over strange ground, as if afraid of what they are saying, but as if they cannot help saying it.
She liked the bird. She was going to bury it in that pretty box.
When I was a girl, my kitten, there was a boy took a hatchet, and before my eyes, before I could get there, if they hadn't had me back, I would have hurt him.
I wonder how it would seem never to have had any children around. Though pride wouldn't like the bird, a thing that sang. She used to sing. He killed that too.
We don't know who killed the bird.
I knew John Wright.
It was an awful thing was done in this house that night, Mrs. Hale. Killing a man while he slept, slipping a rope around his neck that choked the life out of him.
His neck choked the life out of him.
Her hand goes out and rests on the bird cage.
We don't know who killed him. We don't know.
If there'd been years and years of nothing, then a bird to sing to you, it will be awful. Still, after the bird was still.
I know what stillness is. When we homesteaded in Dakota, my first baby died after he was 2 years old, and me with no other than...
How soon do you suppose they'll be through looking for the evidence?
I know what stillness is. The law has got to punish his crime, Mrs. Hale.
I wish you'd seen Minnie Foster when she wore a white dress with blue ribbons and stood up there in the choir and sang. Oh, I wish I'd come over here once a while. That was a crime. That was a crime. Who's going to punish that?
We mustn't take on.
I might have known she needed help. I know how things can be for women. I tell you, it's queer, Mrs. Peters. We live close together and we live far apart. We all go through the same things. It's all just a different kind of the same thing. If I was you, I wouldn't tell her her fruit was gone. Tell her it ain't. Tell her it's all right. Take this in to prove it to her. She may never know whether it was broke or not.
May, it's a good thing the man couldn't hear us. Wouldn't they just laugh? Getting all stirred up all over the little thing like a dead canary? As if that could have anything to do with... Wouldn't they laugh?
The men are heard coming downstairs.
Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't.
No, Peters. It's all perfectly clear except a reason for doing it. But you know juries when it comes to women. If there were some definite things, something to show, something to make a story about, a thing that would connect up with this strange way of doing it.
The women's eyes meet for an instant. Enter Hale from outer door.
Well, I've called the team around. Pretty cold out there.
I'm going to stay here a while by myself. You can send Frank out of me, can't you? I want to go over everything. I'm not satisfied that we can't do better.
Do you want to see what Mrs. Peters is going to take it?
The lawyer goes to the table, picks up the apron, laughs.
Oh, I guess they're not very dangerous things the ladies have picked up. No, Mrs. Peters doesn't need supervising. For that matter, a sheriff's wife is married to the law. Ever think of it that way, Mrs. Peters?
No, just that way.
Married to the law. I just want you to come here a minute, George. We need to take a look at these windows.
Oh, windows.
We'll be right out, Mr. Hale.
Hale goes outside. The sheriff follows the county attorney into the other room. Then Mrs. Hale rises, hands tied together, looking intensely at Mrs. Peters, whose eyes make a slow turn, finally meeting Mrs. Hale's. A moment Mrs. Hale holds her, then her own eyes point the way to where the box is concealed. Suddenly, Mrs. Peters throws back gilt pieces and tries to put the box in the bag she is wearing. It is too big. She opens the box, starts to take Bert out, cannot touch it, goes to pieces, stands there helpless. Sound of a knob turning in the other room. Mrs. Hale snatches the box and puts it in the pocket of her big coat. Enter county attorney and sheriff.
Well, Henry, at least we found out that she was not going to kill it. She was going to... What is it you call it, ladies?
We call it not it, Mr. Henderson.